It's another crazy day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just revealed a brand new batch of Doctor Who cards, and they are leading to mass confusion for Magic players.
Magic.
I am a wizard!
History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for a very time travel packed version of Mega Magic News. Wizards of the Coast just dumped a crazy amount of Doctor Who spoilers. And speaking of crazy, some of the abilities on these cards are so crazy that people are having a hard time figuring out exactly how they work. It's leading to a fair bit of confusion. So let's take a look at all the craziness. We're starting out with a card that is guaranteed to sow confusion among Magic players. This is Blink. 1 black, 1 blue, and 2 for a saga that has 2 abilities. The first ability is choose target creature. Its owner shuffles it into their library, then investigates, so they get to make a clue token. The other ability is create a 2/2 black alien angel artifact creature token with first strike, vigilance, and whenever an opponent casts a creature spell, this permanent isn't a creature until end of turn. Now you might be thinking that I'm saying this card's confusing because it makes the alien tokens that are creatures that turn into non-creatures whenever your opponent casts a creature spell, but actually the reason this is going to confuse people is the way that it's numbered. This does something that no other saga does. When you take a look at the numbering on the side, you'll see that it has a 1 and a 3 beside the first ability and a 2 and a 4 beside the second ability. And sagas progress in lore counter order. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and by that I mean you're going to choose a target creature and do the first ability when you play Blink. But the next turn, you're actually going to make a 2/2 black alien angel artifact creature token. Then the turn after that, you're going back to choosing target creature to get shuffled into the library. Then you go back and create another alien angel. That's on top of the weird ability that stops them from being creatures whenever your opponent casts a creature spell. Now, the flavor behind this is actually really funky. I have not watched Doctor Who yet, but I've absorbed enough Doctor Who information secondhand to know that this is involving the Weeping Angels, these crazy entities that can basically warp you through time, and when they send you through time, they feed on the temporal energies that are created by that displacement. And apparently these angels are statue-like when you're staring at them, but when you look away, that's when they come for you. So the idea that these artifact creature tokens turn into non-creatures when you play creature spells, it's like you're staring at them, right? The idea is really funky. Honestly, the Weeping Angel concept is something that has a lot of flavor to it and will tie into a number of cards. But this one's definitely going to confuse people on multiple levels, the main level being the saga stuff being out of order, but it really does tie well into the flavor of the angels sending you hurtling through time, right? Because they're the ones that are basically making these creatures disappear into the owner's library, and then looking into it, investigating what happened to them is what results in the clue token. So this card is dripping with flavor, and I like the way that you have 3 different pieces of the story here represented on television screens. There's something about that, probably for me as well. It's just the nostalgia of seeing these old style TVs. I've been around for a while. Next up, we've got Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey. This is 1 blue and 1 for a sorcery that has time travel. For each suspended card you own, and each permanent you control with a time counter on it, you may add or remove a time counter. So you can make suspended spells either speed up, or if for some reason you wanted to delay one of your suspended spells, you can. And you can do this as well with any permanents you have that have time counters too. So it really does feel like traveling through time. You can either slow things up, speed them down, or you know what I'm saying. So 2 mana to do this and draw a card. I don't know if like power level wise this card is very exciting. Confusion level, this is only going to be confusing if people don't really know what suspended cards are. And since a bunch of stuff like that comes with the Doctor Who, this one's not really that tricky. Flavor text says, people assume time is a strict progression of cause to effect. But actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. There you go. That is a pretty well-known quote. The wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey part, I've seen that all over the place. And apparently this is one of the most epic episodes of Doctor Who. And if you are a Doctor Who fan, there's probably a bunch of little Easter eggs that you see here. Like, I assume this is a computer monitor, but it could be a television as well, actually, now that I think about it, because there's no keyboard or anything around. They both have the same kind of boxy vibe back in the old day, and now they're all just sleek little thin-screened things, right? So, moving on to the next card, we've got Genesis of the Daleks. This is nutty. 2 black and 4. So this saga actually goes in normal order. The first 3 abilities are to create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace for each lore counter on this card. So basically, the first turn you're going to make 1 3/3. The second turn you're going to make 2, and on the third turn you're going to make 3. So this is actually going to kick out 6 3/3 black Daleks for you. Then that kind of helps to set off the 6 casting cost on it, because it is a steep cost. And then, when you get to the 4th step of the saga, target opponent faces a villainous choice. Destroy all Dalek creatures, and each of your opponent loses life equal to the total power of Daleks that died this turn, or destroy all non-Dalek creatures. This is a pretty cool idea, right? The idea of a villainous choice where, okay, are you willing to wipe out the entirety of all these Daleks? If you don't, you're essentially like damning the entire universe to be overrun and destroyed by them, which is really, really cool. That is a high-level, mega-epic choice. When you take a look at the artwork, as far as I understand it, this guy's name is Davros. He is the creator of the Daleks. He looks mega impressive here, standing with the Daleks arrayed behind him. And this card is doing something I absolutely love. It's actually showing the number of creatures that it makes. So this makes 6 Daleks. You have 6 Daleks in the back, and you have what honestly looks like almost a planet collapsing into a black void behind him, but that also looks like a gigantic all-seeing eye that kind of mirrors the eye in his forehead. And Davros looks like his actual eye sockets are empty as well. The clawed curve of his hands. This is insane. Honestly, this artwork is super, super epic. This one, honestly, is a pretty straightforward card. I don't expect this to create any confusion. After that, we have a split card. It's been so long since we got something like this. Gallifrey Falls and No More are the 2 halves of it, right? So this has Fuse. Now, when you cast this, you can choose to play the red side, the white side, or if you're going to pay enough mana to cast both, you can actually cast both at the same time. And they do work together. So Gallifrey's Fall is 4 and 2 red, and it deals 4 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, you exile it instead. And then the No More side of it is any number of target creatures you control phase out. So from a mechanical standpoint, this is a pretty solid board wipe that's going to be able to take care of any creatures of 4 or smaller, and you can phase all your creatures out so they don't take any damage. So you can obviously just use this on one side if you want as a board wipe. You can use it on one side to protect your guys, or you can go, hey, let's wipe the board, but my guys are going to take a temporary step side off, right? And they're going to be fine. Now, in terms of the flavor behind this, apparently what happens is they find a painting that they can't tell if the name of it is Gallifrey Falls or No More. And this is depicting the end of Doctor Who's world, right? It's basically being wiped out because he's from Gallifrey. But then through the actual course of the story, you find out it's fully called Gallifrey Falls No More because Doctor Who basically ends up pulling his entire homeworld out of phase with reality. So all the Daleks that are circling around it, that are blasting at it, they end up blasting each other instead. And I think the concept is really, really solid. I like that idea where they're kind of decrypting it, thinking the world's been destroyed, but actually it's not two different names, and you can look at either name and go, well, this place has been destroyed. It's actually, because of time manipulation, Gallifrey Falls no more, kind of reverse what's happened. That is some epic flavor, and I do like the artwork showing the Doctor with two different, I guess these are like Doctor's companions that worked with him. Admittedly, I don't know that much about Doctor Who, so I'm not 100% sure, but it's the same kind of painting shown from two different perspectives. And in the first one, you can see them coming in and the alien ships are blasting lasers downwards while the city is smoking. But instead, now you can see them flying away and they're smoking instead. I'm not sure how that ties into the whole actual phasing out of the world, but I do like that you have two different artworks depicting two completely different outcomes, right? That is a good vibe overall. This card may be confusing to people based on the fact that it's a split card with fuse, but overall shouldn't be too tricky. People will wonder, wait a minute, if I cast both of these, is it gonna destroy my creatures with 4 damage before they phase out? And no, you'll be able to phase your guys out and save them with this. Next up, we have Riversong's Diary. This is a weird one. 3 casting cost artifact. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. So this is everybody's spells. So how it works is you actually do the spell, right? You cast the spell itself, and then after it's done resolving, then you go ahead and remove it with this. So basically what this is doing is it's replacing the part that would just send it to the graveyard. You still get to actually cast the spell. This isn't just some insane artifact where when you play it, check it out. All of your spells you guys cast for like the next... Oh, actually, it isn't even limited. That's another crazy thing about this. The second part of it makes you think that, oh, it's only going to do 4 spells. But this does all of the instants and sorceries for as long as this card is out. It's already throwing me a little bit into confusion, right? So anytime an instant or sorcery is cast by anybody in the game, as it's going to go into the graveyard, instead it gets exiled. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards exiled with Riversong's Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. So this is chaos, right? This is a tome of chaos. The idea is you don't get to pick which spell is going to go off. And on top of that, more and more spells are going to keep getting added to it as people play more and more spells. So it's going to be hard to strategize a way to really get good effect out of this, especially since once you have 3 or fewer cards under it, it no longer triggers that ability, right? It only cares if there are at least 4 spells to add a level of randomness. So obviously this is something that's going to get more of an effect going on in Commander, and that makes sense. These are Commander decks, right? And the flavor behind this card is that Riversong is apparently somebody who has met the Doctor at many different iterations of his existence. So basically what's going on with her journal is she meets him after things have happened to her, but before things have happened to him. So she has knowledge of his future. And this diary represents all the different events that have happened in different places in time, which is really cool. And they made it look like the TARDIS as well, which is a nice tie-in to the time-traveling device that they use. I really dig this as a card. I think it's cool flavor-wise. I think it's cool for what it brings to the game. It will definitely sow confusion, and it's made for a very particular type of Magic player. I wouldn't actually use this card in my deck because it's way too dicey, but I would enjoy the confusion of somebody else using it. Moving on, we've got Gallifrey Stands. This is some epic looking artwork. There's just a huge scale to it. So 1 blue, 1 white, and 4 for a legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, return all Doctor cards from your graveyard to your hand. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a Doctor creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Then, if you control 13 or more Doctors, you win the game. This is funky because there are, as far as I understand it, exactly 13 different iterations of the Doctor, and they're all represented here on this card. And you can see all of these alien spacecraft, just innumerable ones. This is the epic level artwork on this. So, if my understanding of this card is correct, one of the Doctors actually has some kind of device that allows him to pull all the other Doctors into existence at the same time as him. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is that surrounds it, but that is a funky idea. Like, these are all essentially reincarnations of the same person. It was explained to me that Doctor Who is an alien who can regenerate themselves like a phoenix, but when they do, they're literally birthed as a brand new person with their own particular quirks, personality. Like, they're an entirely different individual, which is a really, really cool way to having ongoing continuity with a Time Lord, but at the same time being able to switch out different actors and have a character with different sensibilities to tell different stories in the same world. Doctor Who honestly seems to have a massive depth to it. And the more I see these magic cards, the more it actually makes me want to get into Doctor Who full on. This card is really impressive with just the scale of what's going on. In terms of actually being able to win with 13 Doctors, that's not going to be that easy. After that, we've got Crisis of Conscience. And it looks like he's trying to decide which 2 lockpicks he's supposed to use here. Which of these lockpicks do I use to pick the door? So, 2 white and 4 for a sorcery that says choose one. Destroy all tokens, destroy all non-land, non-token permanents. The flavor text says, just touch these 2 strands together and the Daleks are finished. Have I that right? This is a really cool card in terms of what it's representing. So, apparently in the story, at a certain point in time, the Doctor is given the ability to wipe out all of the Daleks, who are, if I'm not mistaken, one of the largest threats to the entire universe, right? They seek to destroy and subjugate everything. So he is where all the Daleks are birthed from, I guess, and he has the ability to wipe them all out by just tapping these 2 wires together. That will result in the end of all Daleks. But right, his fundamental belief structure makes him question whether he has the right to wipe out all of the Daleks, even though they are fundamentally evil. So his brain starts to come up with crazy reasons that maybe he should let them survive because he can't handle the magnitude of what he's being forced to decide. And then the decision is taken out of his hands where the moment to do it passes and he's no longer given that ability, right? And I do love that. I love the idea of a character who, even when facing against a group that needs to be wiped out, he's not comfortable with just, yeah, flip the switch, no problem, wipe him out. He has that moral conundrum, the crisis of conscience. It really does speak to the character of the individual. And the artwork is fantastic too. Take a look at the 2 wires. One is white, one is black, one representing salvation, one representing damnation. The artwork in the back showing Daleks being completely obliterated, and on the other side, flying around just blasting their lasers, causing destruction. This is such a fantastic way to encapsulate just this huge overall concept into a tight little card. And even in the actual ability of the card, destroying all tokens is the Daleks. We've seen cards that make Dalek tokens. And then all non-land, all non-token permanents is if you don't destroy the Daleks, they destroy everything. This is fantastic card design. After that, we've got another confusing one in the form of Don't Blink. This ties into those angels that we were talking about, and you can see one now in the moment of movement where it reaches out and sends you hurtling through time. 1 blue and 1 for an instant that says, until end of turn, if 1 or more creatures would enter the battlefield from exile, or after being cast from exile, their owners shuffle them into their libraries instead. That is a confusing ability. Essentially, this is the anti-blink card. So there's a bunch of cards that are called blink cards, and what they do is they let you remove a creature, basically from play until the end of turn, right? You go, okay, I'm going to remove from the battlefield and put it into exile until end of turn, and at the end of the turn, it shows back up. The concept of blink is based on the old blinking spirit. Oh, here for a second, and now I'm gone, right? So this one says, oh, look at you. Did you blink something out? Well, in response, I'll play this. Now, when it would come back into play, instead, it actually ends up getting shuffled back into your library, which is a very funky way to counter blink effects. Like, this is called Don't Blink, and it counters blink effects. That is epic level design in terms of making sure the ability actually ties in with the name, and it also fits with the flavor of the angels that send you hurtling through time. Being sent back into the library is hurtling through time. Like, this is fantastic design, even if it is somewhat confusing. It is a fun little answer for those people who like to play cards either from exile by casting them in a different way or triggering their cards to blink out and then come back. And they put cycling on this card, which is a fantastic choice because ultimately there's going to be a bunch of times where you don't want to use it. Being able to pitch it helps you out so you can get something else. Flavored text says, blink and you're dead. Oh man, look at this. It's the idea of a stone angel that can send you hurtling through time with alien powers. That is a fascinating concept. And this artwork is really dark. Like, I love it. Moving on, we've got bigger on the inside. This is 1 green, 1 red, and 3. It feels a little bit weird for this to be red-green to me. I'm not sure why, but I feel like white-blue just feels correct, but that doesn't matter, right? It says, enchant artifact or land. Enchant a permanent has target player adds 2 mana of any one color. The next spell they cast this turn has Cascade. Obviously, adding mana of any color by tapping, that part makes perfect sense for like the red-green vibe. There's just something about like the name and the artwork that says to me, this should be a white-blue. Like creating extra space in an interdimensional pocket feels white-blue to me, but that's a very minor flavor quibble. This is a weird one, right? Like you can put it on any permanent, so it doesn't have to go on a creature, and they can produce mana for you and then let you cascade spells. I don't really know how that fits into the flavor of Doctor Who. Overall, obviously bigger on the inside is something kind of like D&D with Baba Yaga's hut or other interdimensional spaces, where on the outside it's a small compact sort of thing, and inside it's this huge sprawling mansion, which is an awesome concept. And I like the fact that they have the quirk of it always being this police call box, right? Where the idea is you can make these time machines look like anything, but this one's broken, so it's stuck in this form. And that, I mean, it also kind of makes me think of Bill and Ted, right? So I like the vibe. The artwork shows the Doctor opening up, inviting you to come in, and it really does. I like the fact that the call box is put on some kind of plane. So when you look behind it, there's not really much going on. You can see the landscape in the distance, but it's kind of empty around it. And that adds to the fullness feel of the inside of it when you take a look, right? It's pretty sweet overall, although the card itself, to me, is underwhelming from a play perspective. Then we've got Run for Your Life. This is 1 red, 1 blue for an instant. 1 or 2 target creatures each gain haste until end of turn. They can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with haste. I really love the addition of the can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with haste. They could have had it, they can't be blocked this turn. But by adding except by creatures with haste, it gives, first of all, the idea that they could be caught, but also this whole like, okay, we're motoring along, but if you have somebody who's fast enough, they could catch us. And I don't know if this is an episode where like there are mannequins coming after you. I'm just assuming that because I know there's a mannequin episode, and in the background of the art you can see these like kind of rigid locked zombie bodies. So I'm not sure if that's what's going on. I don't know if Doctor Who ever had zombies, so I think it's the mannequin episode. So this has escape as well, which makes perfect sense because it's an escape card. You pay 4 mana, exile 4 other cards from your graveyard to cast it again. It's honestly a pretty underwhelming ability overall, right? 2 mana instant to give 2 guys haste. The fact that you can do it multiple times from your graveyard is the only thing that makes this card feel somewhat playable. The flavor behind it is pretty funky. This is apparently when this doctor meets this girl for the first time, right? He's like, "Hi, Rose, nice to meet you." Or he's like, "What's your name?" She's like, "Rose." He's like, "Hi, Rose, nice to meet you. Run for your life." And the way he says it too is like, it's just cheeky. It's not this terrified kind of run for your life. There's just this fun to it. So I actually watched the clip of that because I wanted to know what was going on, and it gave me a chuckle. And this artwork definitely has the vibe of people who are running for their lives, right? This guy he's got a somewhat calm but concerned look on his face. She looks a little bit angry and confused as she's being pulled along because either she's not as fast as him or she doesn't quite know what's going on, doesn't know him well enough, doesn't really want to go with them. I like the fact that they're running into the cold darkness and behind them is this red hellish light and you've got steam blasting down around them. It really does give a vibe of fleeing into some cold, dark, unknown area. So that gets a win from me. Then after that, we've got Day of the Moon. 1 red and 2. This saga does the same thing 3 times. Choose a creature card name, then goad all creatures with a name chosen for Day of the Moon. This is another one I feel like might confuse some people. So, I mean, ultimately what you're going to do each turn is you're going to pick a creature name and then everybody with that name has to fight. So you could be like, yo, Gus has got to fight. And then the Tickle Dragon's got to fight. And then Goat Hugger's got to fight. So in the first turn, it's Gus. Then the second turn, it's Gus and the Dragon. And then the third turn, it's Gus, the Dragon, and the Tickler. They all get, "I'm so mad right now, bro. You're making me angry. Did you fire lightning at that astronaut while a lady with an eye patch watched your skull head? And did you keep track of how many astronauts you lightning blasted on some lady's face? She's not a tally, man. Tally or bananas." You might have figured out by now that I have literally no clue about what's going on with this one, all right? There's a bunch of the Doctor Who cards where I have some clue. This one is just, I have absolutely no idea, but the artwork's awesome. This lady's face, at first I thought she was the one covered in tallies, but the tallies are floating everywhere. You've got a moon over her eye that kind of resonates as the eye patch of that lady down there, and then you got Captain Skullhead. Like, this is a very weird card, and ultimately, I don't know, does it feel like it's worth it to goad creatures just for this? It doesn't to me. It feels pretty underwhelming. Then we've got Canine Mark 1. 1 blue for a 1/1. It's a legendary artifact robot dog. So, as long as it's untapped, other legendary creatures you control have ward 1, and that's negative. Affirmative. 1 blue and 1, target legendary creature can't be blocked this turn. And it has Doctor's Companion. You can have 2 commanders if the other's the Doctor. So you can use Canine as one of your commanders, which makes him better, honestly. Because when I look at his abilities all by himself, a 1 blue for a 1/1 that gives your legendaries ward 1 isn't really that big a deal. But if you're using him as a companion and you can make your other commander unblockable, that adds to the level, right? So the Canine is a companion that, I guess this guy was actually in the show for like 8 years, and he can regenerate himself too, so he ends up regenerating into another variation of himself. And he is like somewhat associated with the Doctor, but apparently this is more connected to one of the Doctor's friends. I believe her name was Leela. So this is more her traveling companion and ends up going on to do different things in different parts of the story. But ultimately, that's all I know about Canine. I mean, you look at the artwork and it does have the vibe of a robot dog, but one that was designed like a while back. This is retro futuristic, right? So it's an all right card, but nothing too crazy. Now, the last card we're going to look at is Decaying Time Loop. 1 red and 3 for an instant that says discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. And it has Retrace. I mean, the fact that you can do it at instant speed, I think, is the only saving grace of this card. Because you can do it, like, at the end of your opponent's turn or something like that, if your hand sucks, and you can replace it. And if you have lands in your hand, you can pitch them to do the retrace and cast it again, so you can feed through a bunch of cards. I suppose you could do a madness build around it as well, right? The flavor text says, we try it, we try. It doesn't work, we try again. We learn, we improve. We fail again, but better. All right, so I don't. It's impossible to find any useful information, for me at least, about the 13th Doctor compared to like the previous ones, because it seems like a lot of people don't like this new Doctor. So I found that when I was looking at all the other cards, I could find discussions surrounding virtually all of them to gain extra side information. But with this one, absolutely nothing. So looking at it purely from the perspective of what the card's trying to say, it looks like they're constantly going through a time loop over and over as that time loop is decaying, trying to find the right path to make it through, and just, okay, we're going to keep screwing up, but we'll eventually get better. There's something weird about this artwork, and it's the Doctor, right? When you look at the Doctor, she looks, because of the perspective, she looks like she'd actually be like she's way up at the front of the artwork where the other two are further back or something like that. So it makes her look like she's tiny, like she'd be like 3 feet tall or something. There's just something weird about the perspective. I do like the clock in the background with the Daleks blasting their lasers off. Their aim is absolutely terrible. Like, I thought the stormtroopers were bad. Look at this nonsense. So, I mean, in terms of making a card where you keep going back through time loops, it does work in that regard. The retrace works. Discarding your cards, getting a brand new hand, trying again. Like, overall, the flavor does tie together on this card. So you do have that. I'm not sure if it's a super playable card, though. Anyways, that wraps up all the spoilers we have in terms of cards. I'm going to be talking about some of the actual planes that go along with this in a live stream, so that'll happen either over here tomorrow or on my other channel tonight. I haven't 100% decided, so you can pop by Hatcher tonight and check out if we're doing that on a live stream. Otherwise, it'll probably be a Historian live stream tomorrow night. Big shout out to my patrons for supporting my channel. Thanks for coming by, everybody, and I'll see y'all for the next video.